Welcome to Out of Bounds. I'm your host, Stephen Dennis. Today, my guest is Marissa Emanuele. They're a social media consultant, content creator, podcast host, and community organizer. All right, Marissa, thank you for joining me today on Out of Bounds.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm really glad you're doing this, Stephen, and I'm glad you invited me. So thanks. I'm looking forward to talking to you about all this stuff.
Yeah, I'm very excited to chat with you and for kind of to give you a little bit insight into Out of Bounds and what this whole project is. So this space is dedicated to expanding and elevating the discourse in the face of what feels like a shrinking, acceptable field of play. Over the course of many years now, it feels like the things that we're allowed to talk about have been dwindling. And so this is an effort to push back on that, to allow folks to hear things that they might disagree with, and to, in a world of short form, which I know that you excel at and I do not, kind of interrogate some of the ideas, themes that are shaping the culture and our politics. So to help us do that, we start each conversation with my guest giving an opinion, an idea, a perspective, a take that they have maybe been holding on to in the chamber, that might be viewed as polarizing, controversial, in opposition to maybe the circles that they usually swim in. So without further ado, Marissa, feel free to dish your out of bounds take.
Question. I was thinking about this a lot, and I think something I've started talking about more lately, and I've been seeing more and more discourse around this topic. So I am going to wade into it as well. Is this conversation about matriarchy? And I'm not sure if these are ideas that have started coming across your feed more often, but I believe we are headed into a new era where we will need to live in a society that is a more matriarchal structure. People's reaction to that is, oh, so you just want to put women in charge and you don't want men anywhere. And I think it's really important to dig into it a little bit. And what I love about this idea is that when you think about a patriarchal structure, right? It's a pyramid, right? You have to work your way to the top, and only a few people can sit at the top. Everybody else is fighting their way to get there, to get resources, to get what they need. The people at the bottom suffer, and only the people at the top really can be successful. A matriarchal system, conversely, is shaped like a circle, and everyone stands around that circle protecting the people at the middle. So the whole unit is oriented around care and protection and taking care of the most vulnerable in the communities. Most often that's children. So when people hear matriarchy and they freak out, it's like this isn't about really even about gender or women. It's about protecting the vulnerable, protecting the children. And when I think about like big picture, all the topics that we're dealing with right now, they all are root issues caused by patriarchy, by white supremacy, by capitalism, by all these interlocking structures that we've had. And I believe that we are moving into a world that is more care-based. And that's my hope, right? Is that we're living through this moment right now where we're seeing everything like break open, and we're seeing the ugliness, we're seeing the evil, but in doing that, we're like purging it. And then what comes next is going to be something that's rooted in that care and compassion.
Yeah.
So
Not as much about dominating, and more about caring for your those in your tribe. And as someone
exactly.
who's I'm a big animal guy and love elephants. They obviously live in a matriarchal society, and kind of the queen matriarch is the one that keeps everybody at bay and will force off a bull when they feel like they're threatening kind of the peace of their ecosystem. So okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
I have started to see a little bit of that trickle in, but it'll be interesting after I post this clip to see if it hits my algorithm more.
I think there was a lot of talk, I think the last couple of weeks with some of the Graham Plattner stuff that was coming
Sure.
out. And even just my experience in organizing spaces, I'm very new to all of this. Openly, this is not where I've spent most of my time up until recently. Every space I enter, it's like and you're in a lot of those rooms too, Stephen. And a lot of
Mhm,
those rooms, it's a lot of women. And it's a
mhm.
lot of
Yes.
women taking the lead. And so like we want more like men coming in and doing what they do. And this again, it's not better or worse, right? But it
Mhm.
is that like protection of the vulnerable and prioritization. You said the word dominance, right? It is that
Yeah.
idea that the patriarchy is all about dominating each other. And
Mhm.
the world that I want to build and the people that I want to work with and deal with are people who are like, no, I want to be in that circle. I want to be in that circle working with you and protecting the center. So that's kind of
My
how my brain's been spinning.
my key thing to chew on with that, would be, so I've seen it a lot in, kind of like uh, the rise of, quote unquote, like the girl boss per se,
Mm,
and how a lot of, there are more women than ever before who are in leadership positions, in, corporate environments. And I think an unfortunate kind of, casualty or, consequence of like a patriarchal system is that many leaders, whether they be, men or women, uh, copy or mirror the behaviors of those that they have seen lead prior to. And
yes.
so, if you are, a woman who, again, I know that can speak to this from experience, but like it can be, if you're anyone who's climbing the corporate ladder, you see what works well for the people that are in the positions that you're aspiring for. Sometimes that's not the most, empathetic and welcoming and human first behavior. And either in order to, you believe that either to aspire to that position, or once you're in that position, you sometimes take on the bad habits that were there, previously. So I think,
Yeah.
and I think women are 1000% capable of it, is detaching from like, okay, I don't need to act like the boomer boss that I had, who gave, who thought work was my life, and I, had nothing to do outside of, the workplace. um I think I fully know that women are capable of like detaching from that behavior, and I feel like they have a better shot at doing it than a lot of men do, because it's just, you're kind of, copying a pattern,
Yeah.
from older generations.
To that, I mean, to that point, like I've spent my most of my adult life in corporate America, and
Mhm.
the women are the strongest. How do I put this? The women very often are upholding those patriarchal structures, right? And so that's why I'm not saying we need to get all the men out and the women need to be in
Sure.
charge, because the mindsets, we're all raised in the patriarchy. You and I were
Hmm.
both raised under the patriarchy, and,
Hmm.
and it expressed in our lives differently. But
Yeah.
yeah, we absolutely will still uphold those structures. And so that's why for me, it's not just about electing more women. It's
Sure.
about really rethinking how we're all existing with each other, and
Yeah.
if we're moving the ball forward.
100%. Love that. I know you said that you were, new to this, and I kind of wanted to get into, quote unquote, this. And one thing that I'm always fascinated about, it's a personal curiosity of mine, is, folks' political journeys and kind of their evolutions of their worldviews and the, defining moments, whether they be in your own life or in the world, that kind of pushed you and caused this inertia to get you to where you are today. And then we'll kind of talk about where you are today. But, it's your journey. You can start wherever.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, what that, has been like for you, and kind of your introduction to, politics, or any type of online advocacy, and how we get to today.
Yeah, sure. So from kind of a political perspective, I have definitely had a really big evolution, and I haven't talked about it like publicly a lot. I've alluded to it a little bit, but let's see. So my first presidential election that I could vote in was in 2008, and
Hmm.
I voted for John McCain. I was I spent a lot of my early adult years um, in a more conservative headspace for sure.
Hmm.
I was one of those people who resonated with the idea, which I laugh at now, obviously, is this idea of fiscally conservative and
Sure.
socially liberal, right? Which
Yeah.
like doesn't exist. But
Hmm.
I think this was a lot of my own personal naivety and
Hmm.
ignorance. But I didn't participate in a lot of political conversations. And so
Sure.
my worldview was
Very
very like,
common for back then. I mean, again, this is 2008. It's
yeah,
not, social media is newer at the time. Like it wasn't, people didn't wear their politics on their sleeve as they do today. It was a lot of
exactly.
like um, my family's kind of dynamic about it was like, you don't talk, politics and religion at the dinner table. Like that was
Hmm.
kind of, and now obviously that has changed.
It was definitely, it was a different time. But like that being said, I look back on my college years and like I can remember being like drunk at parties and having like people who are much more left leaning than me trying to like explain stuff to me, right?
Hmm.
And it just wasn't getting through, and I look back and I
Sure.
cringe, you know what I mean? And so I don't want to like abdicate my own responsibility in that,
Hmm.
right? Like that was definitely something that as I've gotten older have had to kind of like reckon with a little bit.
Hmm.
But I would say that really shifted significantly around the time of the Trump election, the first
Hmm.
one in
Yeah.
2016. So I was, I was in my early 20s when that primary was playing out. And I just remember watching that and watching all the debates because I was a little bit more engaged than the average bear. I was always paying attention to what was happening and
Hmm.
watching that. And I was like, who the fuck am I going to vote for out of these
Hmm.
clowns? Like, oh my God, these people are
Yeah.
idiot. Like I was like, yeah, was not happy with what I saw. And by the end of that primary process, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be voting for a Democrat. Like, I
Hmm.
guess I'm voting for Hillary.
Hmm.
And at that point, it was like a sort of mask off moment where I was like, oh, what I thought this to be, I had these sort of principled ideas that I thought everyone else was aligned with. And I was like, you guys
Yeah.
don't all think that stuff. Y'all were tricking me, which I think
Hmm.
a lot of people have had those experiences now since then in different ways. But that was what it was for me. And I remember watching the Women's March. I lived in Massachusetts. I lived in Boston and I lived in the North End, and I had the TV on and I saw the footage from the Women's March. And I was like, I'm not the type of woman who goes to a pussy hat protest. Like, I don't,
Hmm.
sorry, can I swear on this?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Go
Yeah.
for it. Let it rip. Yeah.
It's called Out of Bounds. So it's probably
Yes.
safe.
Yeah.
But I was, that was my mindset at the time, but I was watching it and I remember thinking like, I'm a half a mile away from this right now and I'm sitting in my
Hmm.
house. What am I doing? Like, go out there. And so I did. And I went out and I just walked around by myself. And I was like, that I think for me, like shifted kind of identity wise, like where I was.
Hmm.
And since then I got more and more engaged. I always paid attention to kind of local politics at a light level. I moved to New Hampshire in 2021 and, engaged with the primary process and paid attention a little bit. But I, again, was very much of the mindset, especially with Trump being the big bad guy. It's really
Hmm.
easy to just be like, okay, well, I'm going to go for the good guys and go against the bad guys.
Hmm.
And I think that the next big turning point for me was after Trump took office again in 2025 and at the beginning of 2025. And watching these things start playing out, watching the Laken Riley Act,
Hmm.
watching all of these Trump appointees getting confirmed and our representatives in New Hampshire always being on those lists, right? You'd see the list the next day that's like,
Hmm.
here's the bad vote that happened and here's who voted for it. And every
Yeah.
time I'm like, what the fuck are these people doing? Like, what? I thought these were the good guys. You guys have all been telling me that these were the good guys.
Hmm.
And it just, the cognitive dissonance was
Yeah.
like kind of broke me a little bit. And, in the meantime, I had been starting, I've always used social media. I do social media professionally. I've worked in
Hmm.
the corporate world for about 15 years doing so. Like I started doing like corporate Pinterest pages in like 2011,
Yeah.
So I've been doing this. I've always played with these tools and had, a little bit of a following. Right. And
Hmm.
so on TikTok, I had already built up. I always say I have between like 7 and 10,000 followers on TikTok when I started posting about New Hampshire politics. And
Hmm.
so I started posting in 2025 at the beginning of that year, just in a reaction to everything that was happening. I started posting about Chris Pappas, this sort of infamous Chris Pappas town hall happened, I think in March of 2025, where
Mhm.
like I had been, that has been
The last one that he's hosted, right?
the
Yeah.
last one that he hosted. Karishma can give you a day count, how many days it's been. I don't have it off the top of my head, but going to that also really broke my brain because I went to that by myself. I'd been posting a lot leading up to it about
Mhm.
everything that he was doing and the inaction he was taking. And I was feeling just like, how are you not doing anything? You're
Yep.
supposed to help us. Like, you're on our team. What's going on? Getting there and hearing all these people around me say, we shouldn't be too hard on him because he's going to run for Senate and we have to protect him. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we're in the
Yeah.
fascism now.
Yeah.
What do you mean we have to protect him?
And
And
granted,
so,
that's probably not a paid staffer or like a volunteer.
no, it
It's
was,
someone random in the crowd who
mhm.
feels uh, an allegiance or an obedience to protect this powerful figure.
And that honestly has been then the theme of like the last year and a half of my life
Yeah.
since then, is
Yeah.
those
And I
people, right?
we'll dig into that
Yeah,
a little
we'll
bit
get
more.
into that.
So
Yeah.
it I often find that again, thank you for kind of walking us through. I often find that folks who have kind of a unconventional entry into their politics um, are more willing or more able. They have like the DNA structure to detach themselves
Mhm.
from it. Like, the person who and I say this as like a former high school class president, but like the person who wanted to, who was doing model UN, in high school, or the person who was, always destined to run for office. They kind of find, again, similar to kind of what we were talking about before with like the patriarchy, is that they see a model of what works, and what works, historically has been this kind of hollow establishment, don't really stand for much. Um, and they're like, okay, in order for like, this is how it's done, and in order for me to do this one day, this is kind of how it goes. And I feel like, I come from a mixed political household, and like, so hearing different views and becoming disillusioned with kind of the Obama era politics during high school, like pre Trump, pre when things really, hit 11. And when everybody, I was the kid that was paying attention to politics in high school when nobody else was. And so it's like, BC and AD, like you have this uh view of things that were not, you haven't been in this ecosystem your entire life, so you're more willing and able to shout out Noah Khan. You're more, you have the ability to criticize, which is just such a unique skill.
I think it's a benefit right now. When I started posting on TikTok about New Hampshire stuff, and I started getting more involved in the activism community and the sort of political organizing space, I realized how it was like everyone that I met who'd been doing this for a long time is like they had the shit beaten out of them. Like,
Mm.
everybody was
Mhm.
just people like you. It's like, who've been fighting this
Mhm.
fight really hard, and not just fighting the fight, but have like the clarity to see what's happening, right? A lot of people like me are
It's
just
just
now coming in with like
perspective, right? Like,
a
it's just,
fresh
yeah.
new clarity on it. But like when you've held that view for so long, it's like you've just been like beaten down. I just
Mhm.
can't even for me, I'm like, how is this what's happening? What is going on? And you're like, I
Yeah.
know. But I think we need all of those different types of people, because then that's where I think a lot of my value comes in, and what I'm able to bring to the equation is that like a lot of people are on that journey right now. Like, and I think
Mhm.
quite literally like this week, a lot of people are going
Yes.
through, I see this over and over again now, where there's like these weeks where there's just a surge in awareness and
Mhm.
people recognize oh, what I thought was happening isn't what's happening. And now I'm freaking out. And so for all of us who kind of been on our own different stages to work together to help move those people through,
Mhm.
rather than just saying, you're not with us, I think there's a lot of space to kind of bring those folks in.
That's what I think has been unique about this time is that, going through that journey of, was everything I knew a lie or not? It's the Wizard of Oz, and like, Oz is not the great and powerful. Like you coming to that realization can be lonely. But I think what has been unique about this time uh, is that there was kind of a group realization, and
Mhm.
you were more likely to have a friend or a neighbor or a colleague who was going through that phase at the same time. And so it wasn't the am I batshit crazy, like seeing that, are you seeing this too?
Mhm.
And to have somebody kind of affirm you, I think was really powerful. You and I met in real life for the first time at a protest of planned ICE detention center in New Hampshire, and there had been, there's been uh, uh, in-person rallies, protests against ICE and planned ICE detention centers. There's been uh, general strike protests. There's been May Day rallies. There's been protests against data centers. I know that you have been both online involved in kind of the awareness spreading of these events, but also you've been boots on the ground talking to a lot of people who have probably gone through similar journeys to your as yourself. They may have been people who gladly voted for Biden and then Kamala, in the last election, and now are furious at their kind of lack of opposition party that they have put a ton of belief in. Could you shed a bit of light or kind of consolidate the sentiments that you're hearing when you're talking to those folks, either online or in person at these events? And these are folks who, Hassan Piker, who my audience is familiar with, he will call them the Barbers and the Debras. Like, these are your kind of suburban wine mom. They would vote maybe every 4 years, and you would never catch them at a protest. Like, that is something that is like so radical for them. And now, they're showing up in the freezing cold to protest an ICE detention center. I think it speaks to a shift in our collective consciousness and our politics, but I know you've had a lot of conversation with those folks.
I love that. Yeah. I haven't heard that, the Barbers and the Debras, but I love the Barbers and the Debras.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is, yeah, I don't even know where to start. It's a big question. I think, like I said, I wasn't a person who went to protests,
Hmm.
up through 2016. And so still now I kind of am finding my footing, and,
Hmm.
I think it's really important to be there physically whenever you can. Um, for a lot of reasons. And yeah, having those conversations, a lot of times what I'll do at these events is live stream. I think the time that I met you in Merrimack, I work with a friend of mine, Pat Lynch, is incredible producer, and so he and I will work together on these things sometimes, and we'll set up a camera and get a nice audio set up. That way we can live stream and then also like have a nice video footage for later.
Hmm.
I think it's really important to create content. This is probably a whole different topic, but I think it's important to create content not just to educate and like inspire and engage, but also for a historical record. And I felt that way with the Merrimack protest, especially, is we're living in a world where they're rewriting the narratives on us so fast. And
Hmm.
like, I want to be able to point back to this time and say, like, this is what we thought, and this is
Hmm.
how we felt about it, and this is what we were doing about it, and
Hmm.
like have that evidence. So that's really it's been important to me to go to those rallies, capture those opinions. And to your point, people are moving. They're shifting their perspectives really fast. You mentioned voting for Kamala and Joe Biden, and I think that was another turning point for me that I didn't mention, but at the end of the Biden presidency, watching, after October 7th,
Mm-hmm.
and watching the response to that, and watching the news coverage of the campus protests. I think that
Yep.
was a really big one for me, watching the Biden administration and these Democratic city leadership
Mm-hmm.
in these different places sending doing this violence against protesters.
Mm-hmm.
It happened in Durham. That was
Yep.
again, now I forget about that was one of the first local videos I posted too. I kind of forgot about that on TikTok. Was when they tried to set up an encampment, and the violence against those protesters here in our community in like College
Mm-hmm.
Town in Durham.
Right. And they're
And
students. Like again,
there's
like
they're
they're
kids.
they are protesters, but they're students who are protesting. Like they belong, they are part of these communities that they're, trying to use as a backdrop to use their
Yeah.
voice.
And so I think that was a big recognition point for me of like, oh, maybe this is the two wings of the same bird.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this isn't so different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think because I'm only a couple steps ahead of the, would you say, the Barbaras and the, I'm only a few steps ahead, right? And
Yeah.
not even ahead, not like anyone's, but I'm just a little bit like on a different
Yeah.
part of that path.
Everybody's on their own different journeys and timelines. So
100%. And we're all kind of winding and stuff like
mm-hmm.
that. So I have my own areas that I have blind spots, 100%. But I think because of that, I can really get in there with those folks and talk to them about that feeling of fear. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people, especially white women who look like me, white, like middle-class women, we are so on another planet, right? Where we're like, everything's going to be fine. Oh, I'm so sorry that those people are being harmed, but like, we're fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are starting to realize too, that like, no, we're not all fine. Like
Sure.
we're not fine. People ask me about my state. Like, are you safe? I'm like, I don't know. Probably. I mean, not really. Like we all are taking
Mm-hmm.
risks by doing this. We're taking risks to show up. This week alone, I've been seeing, we can get into this as well, but like, I grew up in Maine. I've been watching, I've gone to Biddeford. I'll be going back. I have been watching the news in reaction to the ICE murder in Biddeford play out on my personal Facebook feed. And I'm watching people saying, I want to go to the protest, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid for my safety. And these are like white women like me. And I'm like, babe, like we are all scared, but like we have to go. Like and not everyone has to go. And I don't mean that there's ways we can all get involved, but all that to say, like, I think getting out there physically, having these conversations with people, showing other people, to your point about not feeling alone, I think it's important to highlight those conversations and highlight how people are moving those thought processes forward in case it helps other people as well.
Let me do my little bit of journalism here before we go into the next topic, which obviously you just brought up. So we're recording this on July 17th. Usually these conversations, the goal of them is to like not have them stuck in the moment and have them, be able to listen to this a year from now and be able to have it still be relevant. But I think, again, this is very relevant to the conversation that we're having about folks getting involved, about this shift in both the administration's authoritarian crackdown and the public's response to it. But on July 7th, ICE killed Lorenzo Salgado Arujo during a traffic operation in Houston, Texas, of which he was not the target. And ICE was looking for someone who looked like him and drove a similar van. No body cameras were in use during that operation. And ICE is now claiming that after the fact, they found potential drugs in the car, which the state's attorney general's office has already disputed. And then on Monday, July 13th, so earlier this week in Biddeford, Maine, Johann Sebastian Serran Guerrero was shot and killed during an ICE operation when they pursued him while looking for somebody else that previously lived at his residence. The officer who shot him, this came out last night via the Associated Press, had a history of violent and abusive behavior, had once been rejected from being able to join the military. And shortly after leaving the scene, he called his ex-wife and daughter to try and coerce them into covering for him should they be contacted. And shout out the ex-wife. She had already seen the video and said, your narrative that you're telling me does not align with what it is that I saw from bystander footage. So I know you have a unique connection to Biddeford, and I know it's been an emotional week for folks in kind of the northern New England area, as you know, this thing that we've seen play out on TV over the course of the last year in LA, Minneapolis, Chicago, has now kind of come home in a sense.
Yeah, that's that's how it feels. It feels like it's we've been watching it play out in other places, you know, and I don't even know where to start with this, honestly. Like like you said, I grew up, I lived in Saco, Maine, but Saco, Biddeford are like twin cities. And so I went to school in Biddeford, and most of my jobs were in Biddeford, and Biddeford was very much like my community. And so, yeah, it's been devastating. It's been probably it's been the hardest week that I've had since doing this, to be honest with you. And I appreciate you kind of offered me an out earlier this week. You're like, if you don't want to do it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But for me, I felt like it was actually like, this is really important to me. So I'm going to have a quick emotional moment, and then I'm going to move through it, and we're going to keep talking.
Feel free.
So, you know, I've gotten a little bit involved in this work. I don't want to overinflate my importance in it, but I've like been involved in a lot of what's been happening with ICE and trying to keep tabs on where it's moving and what we can do to support, because for better or worse, I've become a place where people put their questions, and people are like, what do we do? They hear the news and they go to my inbox and they say, what do we do?
You've become a resource to those in the community based off of, you know, you now through your platform and through your involvement have like a gravitational pull where either folks who have the resources and the information are looking to not use you, but like utilize your platform to share it. And then the folks that, you know, folks like myself who are looking for ways to get involved, will see the content you put out and are like, okay, Marissa must know, you know, a way for me to make a difference or make an impact and make that first step. And I know that that's been something you've been able to do in just the days following Monday's shooting.
Yeah. So yes. So I try to be a responsible steward of that, and I try to take that, like people put that on, or are looking to me for that. So I try to stay up to date on what's happening and where I can direct people and so I've been following all this all along, and I've been worried about Biddeford for a long time, and Biddeford's been worried about Biddeford because there has been so much activity there, and it never stopped. You know, they're saying ICE pulled out of Maine, all this stuff, but it never stopped. And so seeing this news on Monday morning was like, it like hit me like a truck. And I don't think anyone was surprised. And it was just kind of like, okay, it's here now. And, you know, like you said, I think I saw I was watching the clips this morning of the ICE agent's ex-wife talking about it. And she's honestly like a hero. I think her speaking out about this is so important. I got up there on Monday night for the vigil. I'm really, really glad I went. I haven't been back. I haven't spent a lot of time in Biddeford. My parents left. They sold their home there maybe like 10 years ago. And I just haven't spent a lot of time. I think like a lot of us, we have complicated relationships with our experiences growing up. And yeah, so I went back. I brought my friend my friend Emily, who co-hosts One Quick Thing with me, she drove up with me, and I was just pointing out all this. Like, that's where I went to the dentist, and that's where I took my senior pictures, and
regardless of that relationship, that nostalgia hits you over the head one way
yeah,
or the other.
exactly. And so it was. I think it's unfortunate that it takes hitting close to home for a lot of us to like be compelled to act or to really be like overcome. But that's just how it is. And so I've been watching that play out in person, in conversations with people on Facebook, on social media, as these people that I grew up with who maybe knew ICE was bad or they knew this stuff was bad, watching them realize, oh, this whole system is rotted. ICE is a corrupt institution that we do not need. It is a paperwork function. We're talking about immigration stuff. It's paperwork. We do not need a military. We do not need armed, masked fucking losers, these little chodes, to be fucking doing this shit when it's a paperwork issue, right? We don't need, like, it's so ridiculous. And so I'm watching people have that realization in real time, right? They're moving from, oh, this isn't good, I don't like it, get ICE out of Maine, reform ICE, we need body cams, whatever. I'm seeing those people move really quickly into this territory that we've been in for a while, which is like, this is not, there's nothing here worth saving. And being there on Monday, something that was interesting to me, listening to the speeches from, you know, Maine's got their own political, they're in their own mess right now, and I'm grateful that I'm not like a political influencer in Maine. I've said that many times. So I'm not super well versed on all the details there, but hearing a lot of their elected officials talk about the issue and say, we need to get ICE out of Maine, we need to get ICE out of our community, we need to reform ICE. And I'm saying, you guys are doing the thing. You guys are doing the thing right now where you are under, there's a lack of urgency in this moment. And so it is just continually disappointing and devastating and terrifying to see our elected officials not having the strength that they need in this moment. It's so incredibly disappointing, and it is a mask off moment for people where we're all looking around and saying, what are you going to do to protect our community? Janet Mills, what are you going to do to take it? And they don't have an answer, and they have no intention of sticking their neck out.
Or Susan Collins, who was one of like the deciding votes in the latest round of ICE funding. You know, it's always that like the theatrical performance of the, you know, oh, I'm really morally wrestling with this decision, only to always come down on the side of more money for state sanctioned violence.
Always. And it's so disappointing, just as an aside, like growing up in Maine, Susan Collins was so well respected for being somebody that was considered to like the lay person as like a bipartisan, somebody who could work across the aisle and fight for Mainers and deliver for Mainers. And just seeing the fall from grace is like so disappointing. Angus King too. Angus King was like a good, we were all like super stoked about Angus King, and like to just, it again, it's like a mask off thing where we're really I'm seeing through, you know, and a lot of other people are starting to see through that facade of like, you can pretend to be the good guy, but are you actually delivering on those promises? And these people aren't. These people are not prepared to meet the moment.
What do you think? This is, you know, not something I have an answer for, so I'm curious to hear your perspective. What do you think it is that causes these politicians, you know, whether it be the full slate of them in New Hampshire, you know, not all of my audience is from New Hampshire, so, you know, our federal delegation here, so both of our senators and both of our congresspeople voted for the Lake and Riley Act, which gave this funding, gave this check or lack of check on their aggressive tactics, and basically was a green light or a starting gun for this crackdown that we saw. What do you think I just can't put myself in the shoes of these folks who write these statements that are, you know, I'm heartbroken over this tragic scene. This is unacceptable violence, and this needs to be held. These groups need to be reformed and held accountable. When you were, either someone who gave them a ton of money or then followed up that by publicly thanking them and like putting yourself on the record of being thank you for your service, for the tough work that you're doing. I can't square that.
Because I don't think that you can, right? Like you're trying to give, I think even in the framing, you're giving people the benefit of the doubt that there's some like hidden logic that we're missing.
Yeah, maybe I'm trying to make sense of it, but
I
maybe it's just
think here's my here's my perspective is that in this last like year and a half that I've been doing this, it has been made so obvious to me so many times now how little power can corrupt somebody. Like how just this much power starts corrupting people. And I see it happen. And I'll tell you a quick story that doesn't seem like it's answering your question, but I promise it kind of is. One of the first times I kind of put my feet out there in the world and was like trying to create content in the physical space was at one of there was a meeting about the ICE detention flights that were happening through Pease Airport in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
So they were transporting ICE detainees through Pease. There was a lot of activism around trying to get that to stop. So I went to one of these meetings and I was live streaming one of these meetings. And I'm trying to figure out how I want to talk about this. There was some very obvious physical pressure being put on me to stop live streaming. Even though I was allowed to do so. There was a lot of finger pointing, a lot of they had a guard in like full tactical gear and armed and was like breathing on my neck watching me like live stream. Just live streaming this hearing, just live streaming people talking, right? And there was that piece of the equation, and then just watching everyone in the room, all these board members be so angry that we dared come out and question them. There was so much just like disdain for the population expressing an ounce of empathy for these people that they were transporting like cattle through their business, right? We were the bad guys. And these are just people in the community. These are just people that live in my community and have a normal job and like shop at the same store as I do. And watching that in real time and realizing how little power it takes to corrupt somebody, I'm like, this is how fascism happens. I was sick for like days after that because I just was like seeing it play out. How much they just want to retain that control and they don't like being challenged. And I think that that's what happens all the way up. That might be
the answer I'm looking for.
Is that I think you get a little money, you get rewarded, you want to retain the control, you do whatever you need to do to retain the control, right? Chris Pappas, like you said, these people are made in a factory, right? Like Chris Pappas is a factory-made Democrat, right? And he is going to do what he needs to do to stay in that position of power to the best of his ability. What Chris Pappas doesn't realize is how quickly the world is changing around him. Maggie Goodlander, none of these people realize how aggressively the world is changing and perceptions are changing along with it. So I don't have a good answer except for that. Like, I don't think there is, I would love to be proven wrong that there is still an ounce of conscience, but I don't believe it.
But you use the word disdain. I use a similar word, like contempt. Like they think they are above getting questioned, and because of their because of the fact that they got elected and have the support of the state establishment party and the national party, that that who are you to question me? It's one of the reasons why they don't talk to the public, and it's one of the reasons why they are so just miles behind where the base is. So you talked about being physically intimidated at this, press or at this meeting that you were attending. I know that has been something that you have faced either in person, online, since you've made your pivot into um, making more of your content about politics. One of I talked to you about this documentary that I want to host a screening of, and one of my favorite lines in it, AOC, back when she's running for the first time, is sitting down with this old school activist and organizer, and this old man, and he says to her, like, in a very, sharp tone, like, they are going to come after you because they don't own you yet. And it kind of sent like chills down my spine when I heard him say that to her. And I feel like we see that play out in this ecosystem as you have more folks becoming disassociated with the establishment and being willing to call it out and being willing to speak out, like yourself. So again, you can go into as much or as little detail as you would like, but I think it's important for the audience to know the tactics or the pushback, the pressure, the attacks that folks who do speak up face, not to scare them out of doing it themselves. But I think it's important to, if they know that you're going through this, or I had Arya on, for my first episode, like, if they know that these folks are going through this, and that there are people that are willing to still stand behind you and not let you take a step backwards, and if you're standing on the cliff, they're not going to let you take a step back because they're holding you up, and it's like, we only go forward. I think it almost incentivizes more people to stand up, and to speak out if they know that they have that solidarity and support. So I'm curious if you could shed some light into the pushback that you've gotten from forces that are in power now, because I just think it's critically important. So
Yeah, it's I'm glad I'm happy to talk about this, because I do think that um there are more now content creators in this space in New Hampshire who are doing what I'm doing, which is thrilling, because like, I don't want to be the star. Like, this is not like, I don't want to be I'm so glad that there are so many people doing different things. Like, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I'm glad that Carter, doing locally sourced, is doing what he's doing. I'm glad all these people are building social media accounts in different places. Now we have people in Blue Sky that are kind of taking this energy and running with it. And so it's like, this is getting bigger, and it will continue to get bigger the more people that are doing it. And we all appeal to different people too, right? Like, the way I communicate, what I talk about, is going to be interesting to a very different type of person than Arya, right? That's part of the reason I wanted to start working with Arya. When he and I streamed a long time ago, I was like, you're going to be appealing to different people than I am.
Yeah.
And I think that that's good. So to answer your question though, I think all those people are starting to experience pushback, and it takes a lot of different forms. So, sometimes it's more obvious, and it's it's somebody who holds a position of power in some way, whether they're an elected official, or they're a party leader, or they're somebody who has a more conventional path. And usually with them, no one wants to look like they're pressuring you, right? And so I often didn't perceive it that way, until with certain conversations, I would scroll back and realize, you only ever contact me when you want to give me negative feedback about something I'm posting, or you want to give me information that you think will change my mind, but you don't actually like want to have a relationship with me, which I think was hard for me to recognize, because again, I'm a little bit naive coming in, and I'm like, we're all on the same team here. We all want a better New Hampshire. Like, and I think what I've realized is like, oh shit, people are trying to kind of, they're kind of trying to rewrite my narrative a little bit. So sometimes it is more obvious in those ways, and it for me, I find it often takes the form of you need to be harder on Republicans too, because you're just damaging the Democrats and you're going to make it harder for us to win in the general election. I think that's like the big piece a lot of us are getting right now. But for me, it's like, and you know this song much better than I do because you've been in this for much longer, but like, we can't keep doing that every election. We can't keep saying this election is the most important, and if we just elect Democrats, it's going to be better. I'm like,
the same party, the same group of people, the same thought process that lost to Trump twice, and if not for COVID and mail-in ballots, may have lost to him in 2020.
Yeah. And yeah. And I just like I just coming off spending my week like dealing with everything that's happened in Bedford and like communicating with people there and doing what I can there and like hugging, like just like being physically there with people in the community. Chris Pappas did that. Like Maggie Goodlander did that. Like it's their, like they are directly responsible for this happening in our community. And they have shown no remorse. And so you're telling me that that's better. You're telling me that like I still have to get in line behind that person because they're better. How? Because we have to hold the line against Trump. How are they doing that? There's no evidence to me that they're doing that.
Yeah.
So I find that line of accusation just like I don't even engage with it honestly anymore. And I think that would be what I tell other people is like I don't think most of those conversations are happening in good faith. And I'm happy to have like a good faith conversation with people about it, but that's not usually what's happening. So I think that's the more obvious stuff. But then it really is like it's DMs, it's comments, it's like anytime, you know, the last couple of weeks, especially, I would say the last month, I've been putting out a lot of content about what's happening in Gaza and our complicity in it and our involvement in it and our electoral complicity in it, right? And people really do not like that. They really do not like, and I don't know if that's a New Hampshire specific thing, but like, especially with Chris Pappas, people get very defensive and they're like, but he does so much good. And, you know, people like Jean Shaheen have done so much good in the community. And like, I'm not trying to negate like good policy things that people have done, right? I'm not here saying like they've never done anything good ever. But I don't need to caveat every time I say something bad with like the good as well. Right. So it does come, and it is a lot because sometimes then it gets really manipulative sometimes too, where people will, you know, they twist the argument. We see how people, I don't even know how to like sum this up, but they'll twist it so that it's like, okay, if I'm saying something negative about Chris Pappas, they're telling me that I don't support the queer community because Trump is going to pass, or, you know, whoever is going to pass more stuff that's going to harm or women, or I'm betraying women. Right. Yeah. Because, and it's like, that all feels like such a leap to me when it's like, we're talking about genocide. Like, what do you even talk? Like, it's so hard for me to wrap my mind around. But like, honestly, I think doing this work, you have to, this has been such a, my therapist has gotten so much money from me this year. Like you have to be like doing the work to be able to stand behind what you're saying. Yeah. And so I'm trying really hard to put stuff. And that's why I was nervous about this interview today, honestly, is that I try really hard to put out words and language and say things that I can stand behind 100%. And I want to make sure if I'm putting something out there that I will ride or die for that statement because people will poke holes. And I think it's an adjustment for a lot of people.
You want to be intentional about it, which I think most people can appreciate. And yeah, I mean, those, again, whether it's the physical intimidation that you're getting, whether it's the, you know, the slap on the wrist or the, you know, the finger pointing from those in leadership or connected to that environment, or it's from the rank and file, you know, as you mentioned before, like it's from the person at the Chris Pappas town hall who's, you know, telling you to knock it off. You know, those people, I feel like, and again, it may not jump out to you because, again, of your political evolution and your history, like these folks have been wearing the vote blue no matter who jersey since, you know, before they could vote. And so like your criticism of them is your criticism of the politician, of the platform, of the ideology they view as a criticism of them. and their own personal morals and values. And it's usually, the most disgusting is, again, when these folks will throw vulnerable populations under the bus to as they will use them as human shields to try and guilt you out of legitimate objective criticism, and that is because then it's like, okay, well, how much of an ally are you if you're saying, well, good luck being a gay person in Gaza. It's like, the person responsible for most LGBTQ members dying in Gaza is the Israeli government. It's not. So, like, again, it's such in bad faith.
Somebody this week, actually, on Facebook, I left a comment. I don't normally engage in Facebook discourse because I just am like, I can't. But there was something that was just so egregious, and I commented about it, and it was basically somebody was making the assertion that because a candidate was pictured with the Iranian flag behind them, that should be disqualifying for them as a candidate. And I was just like, bro, what the fuck are we talking about? Come on. And I left a comment to that. And somebody was like, well, it's very interesting to see a woman saying that, because if you were a woman in Iran, you wouldn't even be able to talk. And it's just the mental gymnastics that people have to do to justify our imperialism and our violence towards other countries is crazy. Like, we are not bombing Iran to help the women of Iran. Like, that's not what's happening. So, like, what is... And so, yeah, to your point, it's like these are the paths of logic people have to walk to make themselves feel comfortable, I think.
And again, I used to get, because as I've been in these trenches for a while, I mean, I used to get a ton of, there's this popular meme that maybe you've seen of like a B-52 bomber, and like it'll be just like, it'll say Republicans in office, and it'll just be the standard B-52 bomber, and then it'll say Democrats in office, and it'll be the B-52 bomber with a Black Lives Matter flag on it, with a rainbow flag on it. And I used to get a ton of shit from Democrats, and I still do, but there's less so because they've now seen it's become much harder to argue over the last, especially since the follow-up to October 7th, where like you're seeing both administrations in the course of 18 months go be supporting and enabling and unable to call out a U.S. taxpayer enabled and funded genocide that we're all seeing live streamed to our phones. It's hard to circumvent that. I know we're closing in on time here, and I wanted to wrap up. I know you said that you didn't start out to be the face of a movement of per se, but a couple of the guests that I've had on, I've asked them about this New Hampshire Talk movement. It's now close to or over 700 people, and I was curious, as someone who played a role in helping foster that community, what has it taught you about people? What has it taught you about organizing people? And over the course of the last 18 months, are there some big wins that you wanted to shout out?
Yeah, I'll talk about New Hampshire Talk a little bit. And I'll give a little bit of context from my point of view too, because I think it's one of those things that like it's a moving, breathing thing.
Yes.
And so it's hard to put like a firm definition on it, but like the way I talk about New Hampshire Talk is like, this is a movement that came out of social media conversations, right? This came out of like TikTok to begin with. When we started, there was, when I started talking about New Hampshire stuff, there was maybe 5-10 other creators occasionally that would like post about it. And it was kind of like we were all egging each other on a little bit. It was like once it got started, the ball started rolling a little bit, and people started meeting up in real life around a year ago, I would say, is when a year ago is when I did my first live podcast at Auspicious Brew. And I was like, I don't know if anybody's going to come to this, but like there was 70 people there, like packed into that place. And people were just so enthusiastic to meet the other people that were making videos online. And that was, I think, the start of something big. And so you mentioned the Discord. Yeah, I think the Discord's got like 750 or something like that now.
Mhm.
It's really spiraled. We started the Discord because there was a real push from the community to have a space to connect off of TikTok or off of
Mhm.
social media. And it really was like a place for people that were like in the comments too, right? So people who were
Yeah.
engaging maybe weren't making videos but wanted to be part of it. So I think about the New Hampshire Talk community as like a couple of like an ecosystem with a bunch of different pieces, and the Discord is one piece. But the Discord isn't New Hampshire Talk. You know what I mean? There's so much to it, and what I keep telling people is like it's hard to quantify because there's the people that create content. And I think a lot of people think about that as New Hampshire Talk. The people who create content, maybe the people who are in the comments all the time, maybe the people that are
Mhm.
in the Discord. But what people don't realize is the tens and thousands of people that watch the content. And that's, to me, the most important thing,
Mhm.
is we've managed to capture the attention of tens of thousands of normal New Hampshire residents who are not typically engaged in politics. The bulk of the people that we're pulling in, people that are in my DMs every week, are people who have not been paying attention, who are telling me that this is all new to them and that they are on this path with me and that they don't
Yeah.
know anybody in their real life who feels this way. And so for me, that's the power, right? The power isn't just in my social audience, it's all these audiences that we're able to build and the algorithm that's like delivering our content to these people who need to see it. And so uh it's been, so in terms of like what have I learned, I think we're trying to figure out like where to take this bus, right? It's like we're all kind of on
Mhm.
this bus now and we're like trying to go to the next best stop and do the next best thing in the right time.
Mhm.
I think people want to put us in a box as like to serve different functions, right? Like
Yeah.
for a while people were like, "Oh, this is, this is for the we amplify what the progressive caucus is doing, or we
Mhm.
amplify." That was never like, we're not the media. We're not an organizing function, right? Like I'm honest about that. We're not we're a great stream to tap into
Mhm.
to get people engaged, but we're not an organizing function. Like at this point, it is a really amorphous community of people that's trying to find their footing. And what I hope for the community is that it will continue to be a place that people can find their path. This isn't the path. We're not the path. We just want you to come in and find your place and meet a
Mhm.
candidate you love and want to work on their campaign, or get involved with an advocacy group that you didn't know existed, or find a cause that you care about. And look, there's all these other people already working on that cause. They would love your help. And so I've been able to see that, like that story repeat over and over and over again, where somebody's sitting on their couch doom scrolling and comes across our content. And then a month later, they're like on the board of an organization, or
Mhm.
they are like a very important volunteer now with a nonprofit, and they found so much purpose in that. And for me, it's like this is, we're in such a dark moment right now. Like it's dark. It's fucking hard, man. It's so hard. But like I am so filled with hope every day by the interactions I have with people, seeing all these people stick their necks out for the first time and say, I'm going to actually like, even just posting about this on my personal social media when I feel nervous about doing that. Even making a video about a candidate when that's never something you would have done before.
Mhm.
All of that matters. And seeing that has been really powerful. This week, something happened that was really brought me a lot of like comfort. And that was, I had somebody in my network reach out and they're trying to secure housing for a family that has been separated because the father was detained in this area, and was sent to Texas and has been in a nice detention facility in Texas, for like 4 months. And his family was at risk of losing their home. And my friends was like, "Hey, do you guys know anybody who has money who might donate? We just want to get them like 4 months of rent so that way they can hopefully get enough time for their dad to get back." There's 3 kids at home.
Mhm.
And like that's the shit that's like so fucking, that's what's like been like, I'm a parent, I've got a 4-year-old. It's like this is like absolutely like guts me. It like guts me. And so I've just been like, this week has been just like, it's like so hard not to spin out.
Mhm.
And so my friend brought this to me and I was like, well, can I post about it on my social media? I don't know if anyone will donate, but like, well, I'll post about it. Within 24 hours, we had gotten $10,000 in guaranteed donations to pay for 4 months of these people's housing. I got $4,000 in Venmo donations of just people that like, and this is why I say the Discord is only a part of it, because like these names that were coming through in the donations were not names I knew. These were not people I knew from the community. These are not people I knew from going to events. These were just people following along at home. I got $250 donations. I got $1,000 donations from people who don't know me. And that just like is one of the craziest like experiences. And just I think was a good reminder for me of that again, that kind of, to bring it back full circle, of that like matriarchal feeling of like when we're putting care at the center of what we do, people want to be part of that and they want to take care of each other. And I think it's incredibly powerful to be part of this community where like that is at the focus, is how do we take care of our communities? We have so many people doing mutual aid work and talking about that work. And I think as this government, we're seeing so much of it is breaking. We're also seeing these new systems come in. And I think we have to really invest heavily in those new systems so that way we can take care of each other through whatever happens next.
1000%. I think one of the most effective tactics of like an authoritarian regime is to make people feel isolated and to make people withdraw, because it just makes it easier to infiltrate, and whether it's the intention or not, the community that you're helping cultivate is serving to be a wall, that these forces are running up against. So
oh wait, I have one more thing I want to say about that too, that you said that reminded me. I just wanted to like, I just, because I didn't touch upon this too much, like that New Hampshire Talk community, the people who are like showing up to stuff, and it's combating that loneliness you're talking about, right? Is like all these people who are sort of scattered in their own, maybe there's only a handful of us in each community, but like they're now finding each other. People are building real friendships and relationships and working on stuff together, right? So there's these little pockets of people now who are splitting off and going to do their own thing, and also just like finding friendship, honestly. Like after the People's Rally last weekend, a bunch of people from the Discord all went out and like got pizza together and like we're sending pictures and stuff. And I just think that it's so special, because not only do we need to be organizing together, we also need to just like be building trust and be building relationships. And so 2026 is not like the finish line. Like we're just getting started, and the relationships we build and the investments that we're making in each other is what is going to take us the distance, right? And that's what's going to get us through whatever happens next. And so where if you're watching this somewhere other than New Hampshire, like just and you're sitting on you're a couch person, like get off your couch and try to just meet a couple of other people, because you need that positivity, you need that energy, that like shared energy of we're doing something together, and you're not alone. It feels really lonely right now, but a lot of people do feel this way.
And I can attest, and it's something that I've talked about in my newsletter. It's something I've talked about on the podcast, is like the moments where I have like my hope barometer has been on empty. It has been throwing myself into community, throwing myself into the service of others with others, that has kind of relit that spark. So appreciate the work that you're doing, Marissa. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
And for getting vulnerable with us.
What you're doing.
I know it's been it's a challenging week, and it feels like you say that every week, but it's important to kind of lean on each other, as you just said, to help make it through. I know you're doing a ton of cool stuff either online or on your podcast in real life. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at Hi, This is Marissa on all of the channels, begrudgingly, even Facebook now. And then the only thing I have to like plug right now is we are doing, I don't know when this episode's going to come out, but on July 28th, we're going to do an interview with Karishma at Auspicious Brew in Dover. And it's at 7:00. And we're going to she's done a million like political interviews. We're going to try to actually just talk a little bit more about her story. She's got such an interesting story and background. And, you talk about unconventional backgrounds to politics, like this is it. So we're going to talk a bit about her experience as like a lifelong activist and a mother. And so we're going to get into some personal stuff. So if you've heard Karishma do her spiel before, still come out to this one because it's going to be a little bit different. And it's also just a great opportunity to be in community with people. So that's July 28th at 7 p.m. It's free. It's in Dover. And I'll be posting about it on my social media if you want more information.
Awesome, Marissa. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it.